Hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be making a short film in one video as an intro to animation for beginners. Let's get started. Alright, so first thing we need to do is make our scene. So I'm going to hit A to select all and X to delete. Let's start off by creating a UV sphere. I'm going to Shift A, UV sphere. And right here we have add UV sphere. I'm just going to bring this up. This will let us change the properties of this initial UV sphere that we've created. I'm going to double everything. So I'm going to take this up to 64 segments and 32 rings. And that gives us a lot more of a dense mesh. Hit 3 to go into face mode. And I'm going to select a couple of faces here. We're making a bowling ball. Okay, so you can guess where this is going. All right, so we got our bowling ball. There we go. We got the little area. This is where we'll have the holes for the fingers. So I'm going to select those, hit I to inset, and just bring my mouse in a little bit. That will inset those faces. Then I want to select each of these one at a time. Hit F3 to bring up the search menu, and I'm going to type in to sphere, and that will bring up the to sphere command. Now, enter to select it, and then I'll just drag my mouse. I'm not clicking, I just drag my mouse all the way until it stops moving. So I've maximized the two sphere control on that. So I'll shift select these guys, F3, two sphere, drag, same thing. Right here, select those guys, F3, two sphere, drag. Now we need to delete the little vertex, so I'll go to vertex mode. Delete this little vertex that's popping out on each of these. Now we got these rings. Now I'm going to hold down Alt, and this is loop select mode. So if I hold down Alt, you select a loop of edges or vertices. As long as they're connected, it'll select a full loop. So I'll hold down Shift and Alt and click another one to grab that one, and that one as well. So now I've got 3. I'm going to switch from global to normal orientation, and I'll turn on my widget so you can see what's happening. So normal orientation basically just means the widget will be pointing in the direction that the faces are all pointing in. If you have multiple faces selected or multiple vertexes like this, it will create the average of all of those and give you what direction that is. This way, if I hit E to extrude, I can now hit Z and to lock it on the Z, and I'll just bring it back, and they'll move in the same direction as their kind of the angle of those faces. Now I need to hold down Alt, select each of these one at a time, and type grid fill. And that will fill that. And I'll turn my span up to 2, which will create this nice little cross hatch there to close off those holes. All right, I'm going to right click, shade smooth. And then I'm going to go over here to, I'll just bring this up a bit, go to the wrench, and I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. I might crank that up to 2. There we go. We're going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to select the vertexes that are around the hole there. If I turn off my overlays, you can really see how this works. I'll hit F3. I'm going to go to to sphere again, and I'll drag my mouse, and I'll just see that shape change to a circular shape. I'm just looking for it to get a little bit circular, and then I'll click to commit to that. And I'll just do that for these as well. Bop, bop, bop. Bank, 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 and bank. And then F3, to sphere. There we go, cool. So now we've got that nice bowling ball shape. All right, I'm going to grab Z, just set him on the floor there. Grab Y to move him over a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to create a pin. So I'm going to go Shift A and circle. This is create a mesh circle. I'll scale it down a little bit and enter edit mode. And then I'm going to hit E and Z. Actually, I'm going to switch back to global transform orientation. That way Z is straight up and down again. So grab Z, scale that out, EZ, scale that a little bit, EZ, scale that in. Z, scale that in, EZ, scale it out, EZ, scale that way out, EZ, and scale that back in, EZ, scale, and something like this. And then we're going to go F3, grid fill. Go. Now I'm going to right click, shade smooth, and go to the wrench, add modifier, subdivision surface. Now I'm going to get this looking a little bit better. I'm going to go back in edit mode, hold down Alt. I want to actually click this little button as well on the subdivision surface modifier. This will allow me to see the shape of the subdivision surface while I'm still in edit mode. And this can be great for just refining a shape, making sure things look right. I'm just kind of modeling this from memory. I don't really know what a bowling pin looks like properly. And that should be good for a bowling pin. All right, let's fix the bottom. I'm going to hold down Alt to get that bottom ring. I'm going to hit E to extrude, grab Z scale just to bring it in a little bit, and then I'll go F3 grid fill. All right, now I'm going to make some little funny eyes on this character. So I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh, UV Sphere again, but I don't need all these vertices we have from the previous settings. So I can just drag these back down to something a little bit smaller. Should be fine. Grab Z, scale it down. Grab X till it pokes through. I'm going to right click Shade Smooth. Shift D and Y, bring that over. My two eyeballs, and then Shift D, grab Y, X, scale that down. These will be the pupils. Let's create a floor. Shift A, mesh plane, scale that right up. And we'll create a camera. Shift A and camera. I'm going to enter the camera by clicking the little camera icon. I'm going to open the side panel by clicking that little tiny arrow or hitting the N key and go to view. We're going to come right here to view lock, and we want to tick camera to view. This allows us to change our perspective, change the view, and it'll just bring the camera along for the ride, which is nice. Okay, now I'm going to untick lock camera to view. And I want to go to my camera and come here to the camera tab and viewport display. I'm going to turn passport 2 all the way up to 1, so it just darkens the outside of my view and I can focus. Now, I'm going to parent these eyes to the pupils. I might scale them down a little bit more. And I'm going to select the first pupil, then shift select the eye, and then Control P to parent. Do the same for here. Control P to parent. And then I'll select both eyes and then shift select the pin, Control P parent. What that does is that puts them underneath each other, basically. So now the pupil is underneath the eye and the eye is underneath the pin. I'm going to rename these guys so things make a bit more sense. So pin. Now if I move the pin around, it'll take the eyes with the pin. Now let's get a little bit of rendering going. Let's just get some materials. We're going to do some pretty basic shaders on these guys. So I'm just going to switch to render view. And I'm going to turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. I'm going to take, let's put an HDRI in actually. I'm going to swing over to Polyhaven. Polyhaven's a great website. You can download free HDRIs and they're great for lighting your scene. So just come over to, it's polyhaven.com, browse HDRIs, and you can just pick any one of these you want and download it. So I might download something like, I don't know, this one, Pine Attic, that looks cool. So I'll just go with the 2K size, and I'll download, put that off to the side, and then we're going to bring this up here. We're going to open up the shader editor, and I want to switch from object mode to world mode. This will allow me to change the shader that goes on the spherical world that surrounds my scene. And I want to go Shift A, search, and grab an environment texture. And then with this, I can click open and navigate to that texture I just downloaded. Now we're going to take the color output and plug it into the input, and there we go, we can see it. Now I want to rotate it around, so I'm going to grab a texture coordinate node, and I want to grab a mapping node, generate it into the vector, vector into the vector. Now I can rotate this around, kind of get a good view. All right, let's click the ground here. We're going to go to the material tab, click new to create a new material, and we'll just darken this one down a bit. And then with the bowling pole, we'll click him, click new to create a new material. We're going to give him a bit of a blue color. And let's take the bowling pin, click new to create a new material. We're going to bring him down a little bit so it's more of a grayish color. It'll help its eyes stand out. I'm going to click a new on the eye, call this the eye material. And we're going to switch over to the object shader editor. And with this eye material, I want these eyes to show up no matter what. I want them to just be white, pure white. So I'm actually going to get rid of the principled BSDF shader, and I'm just going to grab an RGB, make it pure white, and then plug that color, make sure it is pure white, make that color the input on the surface. Now that guy is just going to be white. And then I click the other eye and click on the drop down and select the eye material. There it is. Now the pupils do the same thing, but with a black material. So I'll click new. Call this material pupil, and I'll delete that and grab RGB, and we're just going to make this black and plug it into the surface. And I'll do the same here. There we go. Nice. Now with the bowling pin, I want to have like a red stripe on it. So I'm we're going to go into edit mode, and I will switch to face mode and hold down Alt and click to select this row of faces. Click plus to add a new material slot. Click new to create a new material. I'm going to make it red. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click assign. That will assign this material to the faces that I have selected. I'll do another one up here. There we go. The roughness down a bit so it's a bit shiny. And let's go back to the bowling ball. Let's take its roughness down so it's shiny as well. Now with the bowling ball, it's a little hard to see if it's rolling because there's no texture on the ball. So we're going to add a Voronoi texture and a bump. Voronoi is a random procedural shader that Blender creates. If I plug it here into the emission, you'll see what it looks like. It's like a white and black pattern that's kind of got this cell shaded look. If we plug the distance into the height, or the color, or the position, anything into the height is basically going to look at the black and white values. And where here you have a white value, it makes it a high point, dark value is a low point, and it creates this sort of simulated geometry. I'm going to take my distance down to like 0.01 because I want to say the distance between the height and that depth, the white and the black values, is really small because it's just fine surface detail. And I could take that scale up a little bit, something like that. Now we'll be able to see easily when this thing rolls. Right. All right, cool. So now I'm going to take my bowling pin and I'm going to right click on it and select hierarchy. This will select the pin along with everything that's parented to it. Now I can hit Shift D to duplicate and Y and then X and just bring it back here. That, and then Shift D again, Y, and put him here. So I've got my 3 characters. And my bowling ball. Things are looking good. All right, I'm going to back my camera up a little bit, I think. And I'm going to go for maybe a longer lens, flatten out the scene a little bit. Here, I'm going to go Shift A and create a light sunlight. And I'll just angle it a little bit, bring it around, turn it up. Take my camera and I'm going to turn on depth of field. Go to the camera tab, turn on depth of field, bring my f-stop right down, and then I'm just going to pick one of these pins as my focus object and then bring it back up a little bit. All right, now we're going to switch over to the dope sheet. Dope sheet's my favorite way to animate. It's much better than the timeline, gives you a lot more detail. We're going to click this little side arrow thing. We're also going to go up to Edit Preferences. We're going to go to Animation. And right here where it says Default Interpolation under F-curves, we're going to switch this from Bezier to Constant. Now, Constant is a really great way of working when you're animating because what it does is you set a keyframe, set a pose, and then when you get to the new pose, instead of animating in between them and interpolating between those poses, it just goes from pose to pose to pose. This gives you a lot more control as an animator if you're setting those poses and Blender's not doing any work in between. It allows you to really get the timing right. If you want to learn more about that and really go deep, get a great sort of foundational introduction to this, head over to my Animate Like a Pro tutorial. That'll give you, if you know nothing at all, it's a perfect way to get started. And there's some really advanced ideas in that video that you'll get to. So it's worth watching. If you feel like some of this stuff doesn't quite click, go watch that after this, and then you'll be able to do this again and it'll really click for you. Now the dope sheet is what we're going to be using to animate mostly. And I'm going to turn off only shows selected, which is this little button here. This will show me now everything in my scene that has keyframes. Now right now nothing has keyframes. We're going to change that. I'm also going to drag and split my view here and switch to the timeline just so I've got my playhead controls. And I'm going to click this. This is auto keying. I'm going to turn auto key on. So now whenever I move something, it will set a key for all the properties. All right, let's start with the ball. I'm going to go GY to grab and just take him off camera and just make sure his shadow is out. And then we've got a key automatically set there. I can open up his transform so you can see we've got a key on everything, even his scale. So I'm going to come forward a little bit, maybe 20 frames, grab Y and bring him in here like this. He's going to come in. Now I do want to see him interpolate between these. So this one, I'm going to right click these keys, interpolation, Bezier. This will automatically switch it back to Bezier. This way I can get a better sense of the timing. Okay, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to jump out of my camera view and I'm going to roll this guy back a little bit here. So he actually kind of rolls forward. Be a little bit more. And I want him to do a little kind of forward back correction. So I might come here a little bit, roll him a little bit forward, come forward, and then come back, and then roll it back like that. Let's see how that looks. little bit more. Spread those keyframes out. There we go. All right, now, as soon as he arrives, I want these guys to kind of flick their eyes over to it like, uh-oh, what's this? So I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so I can actually grab their eyes. Just holding down Shift so I get all of them. I'm going to hit I. This allows me to set a keyframe for their current position, where they're at. The I keyframe menu gives you all these different things you can keyframe. I'm just going to keyframe location, rotation, and scale on these guys. So I'll just hit that. You can see now they all get added to the dope sheet, each one. And now we've got a key on all of those parameters that we've just set. Now I'll go forward just a little bit, and I might grab and just move off like that. So now they're all looking at the bowling ball. Also, I might come here, and I'm just going to set this to individual origins. This is the transform pivot. So that means that when I do any transforms now, it's going to transform not from the median point of all the objects I've selected, but from the origin of each individual object. So now I can hit S and Z and just scale their eyes down a bit like that. Maybe Y, scale it out a little bit. Blink. Now they've got a little funny blink. I want to offset them a little bit so they're not all exactly in the same order. So I can collapse these just so I can see them a bit easier. And what I could do is actually just go, all right, I know pupil 1 and .01 are probably on the same object. Yep, it's that guy. So I'll just move his forward a little bit. I'll grab these two, which are probably the next guy. And just offset them all a little bit. There we go. Now I want to have them kind of like pop up and bounce away a little bit, like, oh, let's get away from this guy. So he shows up, blink, blink, and then I'm going to grab the pin itself. Again, I, location, rotation, scale, set one for everything. Go forward a little bit, maybe like 5 frames. I'll rotate him a little bit like this, and then come forward, and then rotate him back, and lift him up and over. Maybe not that far up, and down. And then down like that, and rotate him back, maybe over just a little bit more. Back a little bit so there's more of an arc to his motion. And right here, I'll just come back to his rotations under his object properties, and I will just zero out the Y and the X. It should be what I want. We'll make him go like this. So he's going to lean, and then when he jumps, I'm going to scale Z, bring him up. I'm going to switch to local. That will scale him in the direction that he's actually pointing. And then I'm going to scale Shift Z. That will only scale him on the X and the Y, not the Z. That way I can bring those down, make the Z tall, and make those down. So think about it like he needs to maintain the same amount of volume, right? So when you do a swatch and stretch action, you stretch him out, but you also need to decrease him on the other 2 axes so that his volume kind of stays roughly the same. So, and then we'll come a few frames before that. Be right here, scale Z, scale Shift Z, and go out. So now that I've got that action on the pin, I'm going to put it on the other guys. So what I could do is actually open up the pin, and I want everything pretty much the same. I want like the up and down motion, I want the rotations, I want the scales. What I don't want to change is I want to keep these guys kind of where they're at in the X direction. And I also want to keep them where they're at in the Y, but he's jumping on the Y and kind of moving over. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to copy everything except for the X. That way we keep them on where they're at with the X. It's going to move them to the same Y position as this guy, but then I can adjust that in the graph editor, and I'll show you how. So I'll select the pin, and I want to grab everything, all of his animation, except for the X location. So I'll just box select all these, and then Control C to copy. And I can come over to this guy, and just to make it easier, I'm just going to click this to only show selected. And then I'm going to hit I, and I'm going to set a key for the location, rotation, and scale. Just open this up. And with this guy's channels, so hit A to select all the channels, and then Control V to paste. And that will paste the same keyframe data into those channels. So you can see I didn't get anything on the X, so he's still set back a little bit, but he has moved over on the Y to match where this guy was. So we're going to adjust that a little bit. So what we can do is go into the graph editor. Now, a great hotkey to jump to the graph editor when you're already in the dope sheet is Control Tab. I use this all the time. You can just pop in back and forth between the two of them. It's really awesome. So Control Tab, come over here. We're going to grab the Y location. We want to move him back, but I want to keep his animation, his arc. So you can see here are the keys. This is the animation I want to preserve. So I can actually just select just these Y curves here, like this. One setting you may need to set to do this, if you go up to Preferences, we go up to Interface, Animation. Here we go. If you go to Animation, you want to make sure you've got only Show Selected F-Curve Keyframes ticked. If that's not ticked, if I was to box select here, it would select all the keys from all these channels, which isn't what we want. So we're just going to select that. I've just got these guys, and now what I can do is G and Y, and I can adjust all those keyframes. They maintain their relation to each other, but now I can position him where I want it. I can go back over to here, this guy, and decide when I want him to move. I'll hit I, Location, Rotation, Scale, select all the channels, Control V to paste, Control Tab to go into the graph editor, Y location, box select, grab Y and reposition. Then the ball's going to start to roll. All right, so we're going to pop over, and then this ball's going to go set a location rotation keyframe for it there. Go forward a little bit. This guy's going to roll back. Make sure I go back to global, so I can just grab him on the Y and slide him. Maybe a bit further. Really anticipating that move. And then location rotation scale, and then he's going to zoom. So I'll roll him like this, grab Y, and bring him right off camera like that. Now what we're going to do is have these guys jump so as he goes by. I just realized he's not in the right spot. He's not lined up with them. He's not going to hit them no matter what. Let's line him up a bit better. I'm going to go into my graph editor with the sphere here, and I just need to get his X. I'm just referencing up here when I want to know which orientation I need to go in. Hit A to select all, full stop. I've got a bunch of keyframes here, but you see it's all flat, so it means that there's no value in the X. So in this case, I actually delete any keyframes from the X channel, so I can just delete them. And now you can see X disappears here, and he's not yellow anymore, and I can just change this to whatever I want. All right, now let's have the pins jump out of the way. So I'm going to select this pin. When the ball starts to move, I'm going to hit I, location, rotation, scale, and scale Z, scale shift Z, and then 1, 2. The time is going to be off, but that's all right. Scale Z, shift Z, grab Z, pops straight up, and then rotate him a little bit, bring him up a bit higher, a little bit, and then down, a bit more rotation, down, and then let's put his scale back to whatever it was before. Let's see how it looks. Yeah. Go back to my dope sheet. And I kind of want him to just get this position. So I'm going to grab this set of keyframes, which is his original start position. I'll just bring that back over to here. It's good. And I can decide when I want the scale to correct. So I want him to kind of be stretched till about here, I think. So I'm going to delete all these keys and just grab these scale keys. And I'll pop them there and replace. Actually, should probably be right on that. And I've got a few too many keys, I think. So I'm just going to speed all that up. I'm going to do a little corrective bounce. Up a little bit. So for this one, what I want to do is just use the Z location and the scales and the rotations. So I'm going to select him again, and then I'm going to grab everything from here down. So I'm going to beta box select all that, copy, select one of these other guys, figure here, hit A to select all the channels, and then B to paste, Control V, sorry. And with this guy, I might have him go the other way. So instead of up like that, go over like this. That's cool. Let's put it on this guy. Maybe not. We need to adjust the timing. So by the time he's right here, these guys really need to be high enough. So I've shift selected each pin, and then if I beat a box select, I'll get all these keys here. You can see I can. Yeah, we need to adjust this so the speed when this guy takes off can't do any reaction until after. So I need to speed this all up. So I'm going to scale with those keys selected. That will tighten them all up so they happen quicker. Also slow the ball down a touch probably by just dragging out the final keyframe. I feel like he needs to go a little higher, so it's really clear that he... Cool. Now, once they land, I'm going to have them change their eye position. That. All right, let's have the camera shake as a final touch. So the ball zooms off. And maybe right about here. Let's select the camera. We're going to eye and eye over the location and rotation of the camera. Go forward. Just grab up, grab down, go the other way. Back, back, a little bit less. Up, a little bit less. And then I might grab the original key and bring it right back out. And then I'm going to select all of them and right-click, interpolate Bezier. Scale to bring these in closer. Cool. All right, I feel like the last thing we need is some blinking in the eyes. So I'm going to go to the eyes. And we've already got one blink here. So I can just reuse this for all of them. So I can shift select each of the pupils. So now they're all included here in my dope sheet with only show selected turned off. This is cool. Search box feature. It like narrows things down. So if I open this up on all these guys, so you can see, and then I just type in scale, it'll just bring the scales up. So that way I only see the scale keyframes. So what you can do is we can, shift select each of these guys here. And then in the dope sheet, just type scale. And now if we box select, we're just grabbing the scale keyframes. So now you can see their eyes will keep looking in the direction that we want them to, but I'll be able to do funny little blinks, double blinks and stuff. And there you have it. We've got our own little short film. Hope you really enjoyed this and learned a lot of cool things in the process. If you did, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, if you want to get the full version of this tutorial, we got this full uncut version, runs pretty long, over an hour, and I go into a lot more detail. And I also talk about how to get the final look of this render to get this sort of painted style. So if you want to check all that, head over to Patreon or join on YouTube. If you join at the All Access Pass level or higher on YouTube, you can get access to the uncut tutorials, or if you join at any tier on Patreon, you get access to those as well. Along with, on Patreon, you can join at the second tier and up to get project files every month. So the project files are only available the month that the tutorial launches. So this month you can get that for this one here. And yeah, then you can use those cool effects in your own projects. So special thanks to all the patron supporters and everybody that supports this channel. Thank you so much. Everybody who's joined on YouTube as well. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, have a great week. See you.